Welcome to the annual Rotoworld mock draft, back and better than ever. Matthew Berry will join us momentarily, as well as RotoPat, Denny Carter, and more of our Rotoworld crew. Of course, I'm your host, Connor Rogers, and with our new partnership with Matthew's Fantasy Life, members of that team will also stop by along the way. Let's waste no more time and get some of the crew that's drafting in here. The big man in the top right there, Matthew Berry, Mr. Fantasy Life. We got Ian Harditz from Fantasy Life in the house as well. And RotoPat, I don't think I need to say where you work, right, RotoPat?
No, yeah, for better or worse, you do not. No confusion there since 2011.
All right, so let's start with, of course, the settings, and then I'll get the thoughts.
Hey, I have a question before we start.
It didn't take long at all before you interrupt me for the second show today.
I'm just curious because there was a couple of years there. There's a couple of years there in the long storied history of Rotoworld where honestly they changed the name to NBC Sports Edge. And we're not going to lie to you. It was kind of like a new Coke sort of situation there where it was just like it was a mistake.
I have no opinion on the matter.
And they walked it back. It's fine. But it is what it is. And they walked it back. And so we're back to Rotoworld, which is great. Everyone loves Rotoworld. But I'm just curious, when the company was called NBC Sports Edge, were you Sports Edge Pat? Were you NBC Sports Edge Pat?
Oh,
did you maintain RotoPat
Absolutely
the whole time?
not.
Were you legally required to change your name when NBC, the parent company, also changed their name?
Let's just say, Matthew, I got very lucky that Roto is an industry term and not only an NBC term. So, hey, nothing to do with NBC. I'm just rotisserie Pat. I love Roto style scoring, and that's why I'm RotoPat. There's nothing to do with NBC.
And you love grilled chicken there. I just it just feels like you could have done that. Just feels like, maybe one of the reasons, Pat, that the NBC Sports Edge, that moniker, that branding didn't succeed is because you didn't embrace it. You're one of the faces of the company, for God's sakes. You know what I mean?
Push forward, Pat.
Yeah, just be a company man, for the love of God.
Hey,
how desperately did you have to cling on to RotoPat? You couldn't have been Sports Edge Pat?
You're not prepared. This is mental warfare right now, Pat. Focus on the draft. Do not listen to him. Focus on the draft. Here's the setting.
I'm doing, Connor. Don't let him into my secrets. I'm throwing him off his game.
It is my job once again to keep things on track. I don't know how I keep getting volunteered in for this. Full PPR mock draft, okay? 15 rounds on Yahoo. Quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, 2 flex spots, 6 bench, no kickers, no defense. Enough, okay? So, listen, we got the draft order. We'll get to that in a second. Pat, I know the draft is starting in a moment. We don't want to miss that. So, we are going to pull that up here, and you will get to see the order. So, pull up the draft when you can, Pat.
We're ready to go here. Adam, pull us into the screen. I am on the clock at number 1 overall. So Matthew, no ill will from the company that I didn't change to Edge Pack. So they gave me the number 1 pick for our draft. So I'm back in everyone's good graces. And
not everyone's good graces.
That's true. Not everyone.
Yeah.
Pat is shook right now.
You're in the good graces of whoever's running the draft, whoever set up the draft. And by the way, Connor, do you know who set up the draft? You know who set it up? You know who's our commissioner?
I would think it's Pat.
Yeah, it's Sports Edge Pat.
You're breaking up. Edge. Yeah, I can't hear you.
NBC Edge Pat.
NBC Sports Edge Pat. That's right.
Oh, man. Pat, focus on the pick. This is a massive choice right here. Unless you're going chalk. Are we going chalk, Pat?
Here's the deal. First pick, you want to make a statement. The statement I'm making is that you can't fight City Hall.
George.
And I'm taking Christian McCaffrey.
All right.
And I wanted to be an iconoclast. I wanted to take a receiver, but they all have question marks. Christian McCaffrey has age and workload cliffs maybe coming up, but I like his questions more than I like the receivers' questions. And I'm just going with the best player of the past 15 years in fantasy football, not overthinking it with Christian McCaffrey.
And Scott Pianowski takes Tyreek Hill 2nd overall. That's a little bit of not a surprise, a shock. We talk about that cluster of wide receivers. So we'll see what our fantasy football happy hour co-host Jay Croucher does at number 3. Jay's magnificent team is on the clock. I'm thinking this is going to be Justin Jefferson. It's CeeDee Lamb.
Michael Thomas. It
could be Michael Thomas. Could be Rashid Shaheed. Put all the Saints receivers in a hat, shake up the paper, and pull one out, and you'll get one for Jay. Jay goes CeeDee Lamb. So, Matthew, what are you thinking right here? You're on the clock here, 4th overall.
Yeah.
It's set up pretty nice for you.
It does set up pretty nice for me. I'm going to go Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is who I have it at 4 in my overall ranks. That's where I'm going. Give me Jamar Chase, by the way, proud Fantasy Life investor, Jamar Chase, FantasyLife.com. So,
That helps.
like, listen, I'm on the day that we announced the partnership between NBC Sports and Fantasy Life, Rotoworld and Fantasy Life. How can I not draft a Fantasy Life investor in Jamar Chase? I know there's concern about the contract, but this is a mock draft. But here's what I would say. I think we're a week away from panicking. If he's not in camp, if it's a week from now and he hasn't shown up, then I think we can start panicking. But I'm not there just yet with Jamar Chase.
Ian, you're on the clock at 9. Is there something you're hoping for right now? And you don't necessarily have to reveal it. Or nine's a weird spot this year, I feel like.
Yeah, there's a pretty clear top 8 with the 3 stud running backs and then 5 wide receivers, but AJ Brown arguably in there. So I'll probably just take whoever's left. But let the record show, guys, when I was on the show last Friday, I was introduced as Matthew Berry's and Ian Harditz's Fantasy Life. So if we want to keep that name rolling, that's fine with me. Just throwing it out there. But we'll say it is kind of funny how this draft is just at the top now, a little bit tougher than normal. We had the Tyreek Hill hand injury come up today. We have CMC's calf still hurting. And to Matthew's point, I'm not too worried about Jamar Chase holding in, but the CeeDee Lamb situation still isn't going great. I mean, another good example, guys, why no one should draft their teams until at least week 5.
All right, let's keep the scroll going so we can see the picks rolling in. The running backs are still on the board here, and it looks like we just had one go. So, all right, so Kendall took Amon-Ra St. Brown 5th overall, and then Kyle Dvorak from Rotoworld took Justin Jefferson 6th overall. And then at 7, Dwayne McFarland, of course, from Fantasy Life. He goes with Bijan Robinson over Breece Hall. So now we have Denny on the clock. Denny Carter, of course, from Rotoworld. Pat's pretty much right-hand man in this operation of the guys that didn't go forward with NBC Sports Edge handles.
Well, Denny,
Breece Hall for Denny.
He was my right-hand man, but we are engaged in so much litigation that we are actually currently not allowed to speak outside of the podcast. And I will say I'm glad we're finally to the part of the board. We're finally to the part of the board where we're drafting players who are practicing. Christian McCaffrey not practicing injury, Jamar Chase not practicing the contract, CeeDee Lamb not practicing the contract. So I don't know what they know that Matthew and I don't know, but the other drafters are taking people who are actually currently practicing football.
So, Ian, you went with AJ Brown after all of that. Walk me through. I would assume Garrett Wilson was in play. I don't know if another tier running back was in play. Just walk me through the process with that pick.
I just trust the Eagles offense. And if you guys notice, I made that pick with about only 5 seconds off the clock. Put the pressure on whoever was drafting after me to, really have to use each and every second. But no, I mean, AJB back-to-back freaking 1,500-yard seasons. He owns the top 2 Eagles season, single season receiving records already. Only been there 2 years. So got paid. He's happy. Between AJB, Devonta Smith, and Jalen Hurts, I just want pieces of this offense that hopefully will be a little bit less predictable with Kellen Moore pulling the strings now.
I will say this real quickly. I just think it's fascinating that, again, we talk about this all the time. Justin Jefferson went 6th in this draft. And I thought about Justin Jefferson at 4, and I think you easily could have, if you easily could have taken him, I wouldn't have been surprised if Scott Pianowski took him at 2.
Yeah, Matthew, I don't even rule him out at number 1. He's the best skill player.
Yeah. The other thing I just want to point out, Connor, is that you referred to Denny Carter as Sports Edge Pat's right-hand man. I like the fact that you've established a hierarchy, that it's Pat, and then Denny is like his assistant, his buddy.
It's kind of a risky move by me.
Right, his butler, his valet, his right-hand man. It's the guy who holds the clipboard while
they're more
Pat's
like a law office.
plays.
Like there's always 2 names to a law office. It's kind of Roto Pat and Denny.
Yeah, no, listen, when Matthew says it, he has enough clout around here that could get put in legal writing. So Denny will be officially my assistant. And just keep it coming. We want this to be more and more official. Denny's my assistant. Denny, he's got to do what I tell him to do.
That's a fact.
Would you consider Yahoo Pat as a name? Would you just because we've got this big partnership, we're giving away $1 million as part of this partnership with Yahoo.
No, I would. Listen, I'm going to do what it takes. If that's what it takes to seal the partnership, take it to the next level, I will be Yahoo Pat. I'm an
what
NBC
about Fantasy Life Pat? Would you be Fantasy Life Pat? Because now we've got the big deal between Rotoworld and Fantasy Life. I haven't. You know what? We should go back and check the language because I don't know if we've fully signed the contract. I may call Damon Phillips, big time executive at NBC, and say listen, one last deal point. Pat's got to change his name to Fantasy Life Pat. as part of this partnership.
Makes sense to me.
I'll be Yahoo, Fantasy Life, Roto, Jamar Chase, Pat. If that's what it takes to seal these partnerships.
All right, Lawrence took Jonathan Taylor in the first round. Cooter Doodle took Garrett Wilson in the first round as well. So we've tapped into some of the running backs here, and then Garrett Wilson towards the end of that first round. Pat, you're being distracted by everybody, but you have a very, very key back-to-back picks coming up here at the end of round 2 and round 3. And in just a moment here, we're going to bring in a new cast of characters as well to get their thoughts on how this first round has gone.
I do have back-to-back picks.
Who just went? Who just got
Matthew,
picked?
who just
Chris Olave.
Chris Olave, Nico Collins, Drake London, Devontae Adams, all off the board, all in a row.
Take them.
They want us to be impoverished wide receiver teams.
Yeah. It's interesting. Okay. I'm trying to think of where I want to go next.
A little bit of panic in your voice, Matthew.
No,
a little bit.
I'm just
a little bit.
He's rattled. He's absolutely rattled.
Kyron Williams. I'm going Kyron Williams here.
Okay.
Just obviously massive workload. Hopefully Blake Corum falls to me later on in the draft as well. But I think the only knock on Kyron Williams, I don't think the workload is a concern. Like, I think he's like Corum maybe keep him fresh, but he's still going to get a massive workload on one of the better offenses in the NFL. When Sean McVay finds a guy, he loves to, ride that guy. So I think Kyron Williams obviously going to get a huge workload here. I would have loved Derrick Henry to fall to me. He went a little bit too early. So what are you going to do? But I take Kyron Williams.
The big back-to-back here, Pat. This is going to define your season that won't even exist because this is a mock draft. But this matters a lot right now. What do you got for the people? You went chalk to kick off the draft.
I want to go the ultimate non-chalk here, and I've already got the running back, the anchor RB, and Christian McCaffrey. My heart says Devin Achane, but my head and like decades of analysis say I just have to take the receivers. I don't like Brandon Ayuk. I don't even know what team Brandon Ayuk is going to be on. Cooper Kupp, I'm not saying that he's the next Michael Thomas, but he was at least flirting with the idea the past years. He does at least play football still, unlike Michael Thomas. Deebo Samuel, is he even the number one of his own team? I'm going to go with two guys who are alphas in their own team, DJ Moore, DK Metcalf, and just DJ Moore. I'm not concerned about the increased target competition because I just think the overall passing environment is going to be so much better. And if he can produce that kind of season with Justin Fields, just what can he do with the ultimate attempts or a quarterback stat player and Caleb Williams, who I'm just expecting 40 passes a game. And DK Metcalf, I'm kind of more on vibes, just the way Ryan Grubb, the new offensive coordinator, is talking about hey, you know what? We might actually move DK Metcalf around the formation instead of only sticking him in the same spot for every snap of the entire season.
He did a little with Rome Odunze at Washington, so it wouldn't be shocking.
Yes, so I just two true alphas. Not that Ayuk, Cooper Kupp, and Deebo aren't alpha-type receivers, but I just think there are fewer question marks with DK and even DJ Moore. And plus, I draft DJ Moore every year. I've never not once rostered DJ Moore. So that's why I went more Metcalf.
Ian, a final send-off thought here as we get ready to bring on another group during this draft.
I'm just saying, man, I got A.J. Brown, Derrick Henry. That's first team all off the bus squad right there. So I don't know if we're scoring the most fantasy points, but rest assured we're striking the most fear in all of these guys. I mean, if we had to, again, put our life savings on one player scoring at least 15 touchdowns this year, it might be Derrick Henry, guys.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with you. Aesthetically, you have dominated this draft. Matthew, you are on the clock, but I'm also going to ask for your sign-off as well as you make this key pick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going off my board here, and so I have three guys inside my top 22, which is pretty exciting. I'm going to go Deebo Samuel here. I'm with Sports Edge Fantasy Life Pat here that there's a concern about Brandon Ayuk, and either way, I feel like they will lean on Deebo Samuel. He's just going to have a monster year, and especially if Ayuk gets dealt, which is the current rumor, even more of a massive workload here for Ayuk. For Deebo Samuel. The other thing is that it could have been him or Achane, and I do like Achane, but I went Kyron Williams in the last round, and I just feel like there's more value at running back a little bit later. But with Jamar Chase and Deebo Samuel, at least I have a wide receiver that I know is going to play. I have a little bit of risk there with Jamar Chase, but I feel like I'm off to a good start with Chase, Kyron Williams, and Deebo Samuel as my first three picks.
All right, guys, great stuff. Appreciate you joining us. Good luck with the rest of the draft. We'll bring on our next crew here, and it is quite the trio as we are welcoming on Jay Croucher, Scott Pianowski, and Eric Samolsky. Guys, Jay, I'll start with you. How did this thing kick off for you? Any surprises?
Kicked off wonderfully. I was happy to get CD Lamb, who I think is, in a way, the highest floor player in the draft. Waxed and waned about taking Jefferson 1 and then ultimately decided to go with CD.
You were gonna.
Yeah, I thought I was going to too, but then I panicked. And I think you have to regress a little bit to the idea that, CD is going third overall in most drafts for a reason. I just think the stability of the quarterback situation outweighs Jefferson. And then after that, I was happy to get Isaiah Pacheco as my RB1 in the second round. And then I heard Roto Pat just the blasphemy of comparing Cooper Kupp to my man Michael Thomas, which is completely very hurtful. Even though I have no personal connection to Cooper Kupp, still felt that knife in my back. I think Cooper Kupp's going to have a massive bounce back year. Number 1 fantasy points per game, the wide receiver position in 21 and 22. By all accounts, he is fully healthy this year, so very happy to get Kupp in the third round.
Scott, walk me through the process of taking Tyreek second overall. Everybody's kind of had their own debates between the top 4 wide receivers in the first round.
This is a new thing for me. I had CD Lamb as my number 1 receiver all spring, all summer, and all August until about 24 hours ago. And I come back to something Mike Shanahan told my Yahoo colleague, Frank Schwab, many years ago, that when these guys hold out and they're not around practice conditioning, you just worry about maybe an early injury or they're just not that fast off the mark. And it's funny. You come into the Yahoo draft applet, right? Andy Behrens gives you a personalized video to where you pick, and the number 2 pick has been the winningest pick in Yahoo the last 2 years. And normally I would say, great, I love picking second. I don't like to be exactly on the end. I get a difference maker in the first round. The drafts are often, they become flat, like maybe in the third or fourth round. But the way this draft went, where Hill, I can't tell you with conviction that Hill's better than the other receivers who went right behind him. And then I see Denny Carter get Breece Hall with the 8th pick, who I would consider him and Robinson as worthy guys at the 2nd or 3rd pick. I think the first round is flatter than it has been in recent years. And I normally, give me something in the top 4. I think maybe in the middle of the round might have been where the value was.
All right, so Eric, you had the honors of making the last pick, but you do get that nice back-to-back. So what was your kind of strategy there, knowing that you're working with a different tier of player, but you get the double dip?
Yeah, so I like a hero RB strategy, if you will. I was hoping to get one. I saw them falling. Listen, I probably am not like the champion of the Jahmyr Gibbs bandwagon. I'm a little concerned about just like overall durability, but the explosion is certainly there. And I felt like, I would rather lock him in than wait and see, go full 0 RB and wait and see who came back around. And then honestly, it was, I just want to have a little fun with Marvin Harrison Jr. I felt like, the upside is certainly there for him with Kyler Murray under center to be a legit wide receiver 1 in fantasy. I wanted to make sure I got at least one wide receiver around that turn. And so I just felt pretty good about him being the option. I think when it came down to it at that pick, it was between Marvin Harrison Jr. and Puka Nacua. I felt like, Puka has some regression coming in terms of just like what he did last year and how sustainable that's going to be, especially, I'm with Jay. Let's get a full healthy season from Cooper Kupp in here and let's see what happens. And so I went fun with those 2 guys. And then I'm just going to let the board fall to me. And I don't feel like I need to get a running back with any of these other picks coming up.
I love that hero running back build. I think a lot of people will do that this year, where you get that one guy you can hang your hat on. And then there's just so much RB2, RB3 depth where the players start to look the same. And Jay took a player in Pacheco, by the way, who I really like. I think he would have been my pick had he gotten to me. But I think obviously some people will go 0. Some people will go old school and take a couple of running backs. Lawrence Jackson did that. But I think the hero RB build will be very popular in 2024.
So, Jay, as you wait for Matthew to make your pick, I know you started your team with CeeDee Lamb. You got Pacheco as well. Is there something that you're kind of keeping an eye on here, or are we still in BPA approach as we wait for Matthew to pick?
BPA approach for the most part. I'm wondering if I can snaffle a quarterback here. That'll likely be my play between Hurts, who Matthew has just taken. Thank you, Matthew. And so now weighing up between Lamar and Mahomes, because there are some running backs and receivers I think I can get in the next couple of rounds who I like. So I will go quarterback here. And I think that I'm going to go Lamar Jackson here, because I think the thing with Lamar is that last year, even though he was fine by fantasy standards, obviously he wins the MVP, but I think the thing with Lamar is that the Ravens were leading just constantly last season, and we didn't have Lamar having to go like full Lamar and just have his crazy, ridiculous games like he had in week 1 a couple of years ago against the Dolphins, where he's running for 70-yard touchdowns. And I think this season he's just going to have more of the scope to just win you weeks with those type of games, because just the odds are that the Ravens aren't going to win 13, 14 games, be the 1 seed, and just constantly be in position where, I mean, there were games last year where you could just write off Lamar's stats and just pencil them in, halfway through the third quarter, because he just wasn't going to do anything because they didn't need to. So I think there's still some upside with Lamar, and that he can get back to those wild games that kind of personified his 2019 in particular.
So then, Scott, you followed up by taking his main target there at wide receiver and Zay Flowers. Now, we have 2 RotoPat picks, and then you're back on the clock. So you had 2 of 4 picks, and then a really, really long wait. How do you kind of build your strategy around knowing, hey, it's going to be a while through a weird time of the draft where a lot of quarterbacks and tight ends can start to go?
Yeah, all the more reason why I think I draft better in the middle of a draft. I get the better feel of positional runs. And one thing I want to spotlight, though, is this league is a 3 wide receiver league with 2 flexes, PPR, half PPR component. And I talked about a lot of people would go hero RB, I think, this year, especially the sidebar to going hero RB is I'm going to try to get the best receiver room I can. Tyreek Hill, of course, a signature receiver. Mike Evans headed to the Hall of Fame. I hope that offense can be afloat without Dave Canales. And with a couple of veteran receivers, I thought maybe the third receiver and Zay Flowers, a younger player. If I'm starting 3 receivers in the league and this flex is involved, I want to have the best receiver room or darn close to the best receiver room in the league. And I think this accomplishes it. I like the depth enough at tight end and quarterback that I can let that position come to me. So I got another pick here in about 10 seconds. I know T. Higgins is kind of a boring player, but he's my 4th receiver. I feel really good about that.
So Eric, you do have the kind of long wait. Is there... It's kind of weird brutal. Because once again, it is brutal because we start to see the quarterbacks go, at least the upper tier guys are going to come off the board naturally, as we kind of had that run right there back to back with Hurts and Lamar. But also at the same time, you don't want to play your hand and fall victim of just trends. So maybe it's one of those situations where you're going to not punt on a position, but wait on one of those 2 weird positions between quarterback and tight end.
I think for me, I mean, I already took Josh Allen, so
you took Allen.
It won't be quarterback for me.
So you went ahead of the curve rather than waiting for it to start. That makes sense.
I mean, I think it's a wide open secret, right? That you want quarterbacks who can run. I mean, everybody's talking about it ad nauseum, but it is the truth. It's a little bit of a cheat code, and I knew that by the time I came around to pick again, the top end guys that do that, the Hurtses and Allens and Lamars, they would all be gone. And so then I'd be getting into do I take a flyer on, Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, somebody like that who can put up those kind of rushing totals, maybe Kyler Murray coming off, now in a full season. And I just felt like where I was at, I still feel good. I was able to get another wide receiver there with Amari Cooper. And so I still felt good about the running back situation, that I didn't want to go running back wide receiver again. And I felt like I could take Josh Allen there and feel pretty good about being able to fill the rest of the lineup in the later rounds.
2 quick comments here. One, I will predict that Lawrence Jackson will take Anthony Richardson when we get to him later in the 5th round.
That's -5.
And I want to ask Eric, my buddy from the Rotoworld Baseball podcast. Josh Allen's obviously terrific, 15 rushing touchdowns last year, although that was a lot more than he was getting in the previous seasons. He's got an untested wide receiver room. Curtis Samuel's dinged up right now. Khalil Shakir I like, but maybe there's a ceiling on how good he can be. Dalton Kincaid's a player a lot of people like. Any hesitance to take Allen so early when he doesn't have, and Richardson went before Lawrence Jackson, as Dwayne McFarland is trolling Lawrence, of course.
No.
Eric, any concern about who Allen's throwing the ball to this year?
No. I mean, not at all. I think maybe I'm just a cynical Bills fan, but if you watched them in the second half of the year when Stephon Diggs was giving them a small fraction of what he was giving them early in the year, and Gabe Davis was totally unable to get open down the field, and Diggs dropped that huge bomb in the playoffs that went right through his hands. I mean, I don't think Allen was getting tremendous wide receiver play. Obviously, it's going to be a downgrade now, but I think, they'll scheme to get guys open. I think there's a lot more guys who can do things after the catch with Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir. I think, Dalton Kincaid is going to be a huge part of that offense. They've kind of said that he may even lead the team. And so, yeah, I'm totally fine. I'm like talking as I'm about to pick right now and deciding what I'm doing, but no, I'm not at all.
I can cover you. I can cover you while
thanks.
you actually.
I'm not worried about Josh Allen. Now let me go. Make
I think
so.
the thing
Round
with
5
Allen
has been pretty heavy on quarterback. We've now seen Mahomes, Richardson, and Stroud go in the second half of this round here. So for people that waited, obviously,
you can do well at any price point.
Right.
I would love
agree.
to get Jayden Daniels later. I would be fine with Kyler Murray. I'd be fine with Joe Burrow. I'd be fine.
I like Jordan Love at cost.
Jordan Love for sure. Second half
Yeah.
of that year, Matt LaFleur.
Yeah.
Well, people say, well, the touchdown rate isn't sustainable. Okay, maybe it regresses. It's still going to be above league average. They have plenty of pieces there. I see why people want running quarterbacks. They want signature quarterbacks. But the thing is, everybody who leaves this draft will feel good about their quarterback. You might feel good to different levels. I'm not going to have a Josh Allen, of course, but I might be the last team to take a quarterback in this league. Maybe I'll come back with the second one, but that's the least. Quarterback's the most important position in real life football. It's, I think, the least important position of the 4 major spots that we draft in fantasy football.
Yeah, I think the crazy thing about quarterback this year is the depth in that Geno Smith, who throws to DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and JSN, and has 2 capable running backs who can also help in the pass game. He's going as like QB 27, and no one's going to leave their draft with Geno Smith as their number 1 guy. But at the same time, this guy was a top 7, top 8 fantasy quarterback 2 years ago, and the fact that he is going outside the top 20, 25, I think speaks to the depth at the moment.
Right, even if you want to go just a little bit higher than that. Trevor Lawrence was the be-all, end-all guy a few years ago. He wastes a season with Urban Meyer. It's not his fault. He will run for maybe 4 or 5 touchdowns. He's probably around quarterback 17, 18, 19 in a lot of leagues. If I am the last team to take a starting quarterback, I would love to back it up with an upside second quarterback like Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I think I will just piggyback on that as like, I either want to be like one of the first at the position or one of the last. And so where I was at the turn, it made sense to me to get Allen. I think in a lot more drafts where I'm, where the board falls differently or where I'm in the middle, I'm happy to sit on my hands and wait and see who comes to me, especially in a 12-team league, especially it's not a super flex, right? We're just, most of us rostering 1 QB and not worrying about anybody on the bench or whatever. It's like, I will take, somebody in the 10th, 11th, 12th guy off the board and I'll feel pretty good about it. But yeah, I got my little Bills stack here with my Josh Allen, and then I went Dalton Kincaid, which again, I wasn't locked into taking one of the tight ends, but I do like the idea of that little mini stack. Bills don't have a bye until week 12 too, so I feel pretty good about locking those 2 guys in. I do mean what I said, and that I think that all reports from Bills beat writers are that Kincaid should operate as the primary receiver in terms of just like who's going to have the most stats at the end of the year. I think he is a bit of a mismatch, where they use him on the field. And so I'm happy to get those 2 guys in. And then if I don't have to worry about the Bills receiver room anymore, I think that's fine.
For the most part, I ignore bye weeks, but if you want to break a tie, a late bye week is better than an early bye week because the composition of your roster would be so different when week 12 comes around that I don't care if I have a lot of. Now, I get it. You're trying to make the playoffs or get a bye or whatever like that, but your team's going to be so different than when in doubt, breaking a tie, give me the late bye. It's a tiebreaker. It's not. I'm never drafting a team because of their bye weeks, but if you want a tiebreaker, go with the later bye week.
All right, fellas, appreciate your time. Good luck with the rest of your draft as we're about to welcome in a new group here. So a goodbye to Jay, Scott, and Eric there. Fantasy football just got better this season. $1 million better. Creator, join a private Yahoo Fantasy League and enter the $1 million NBC sweepstakes. Plus, earn extra entries to win when players on your fantasy roster score a touchdown during an opening weekend game that's on NBC or Peacock. Download the redesigned Yahoo Fantasy app or go to NBCsports.com/fantasy million to learn more. All right, let's welcome in our next group here that's been in the thick of this draft as we welcome in both Denny Carter and Kyle Dvorak from Rotoworld and Cooter Doodle, another Fantasy Life member that somehow has to put up with Matthew Berry full time. Can I get your thoughts on that before we talk anything about where this draft is at?
Oh, best boss ever, You know how it goes, Connor.
Best boss ever. Wow, that's a first. Anyways, all right, let's keep this rolling here, guys. Denny, just general thoughts on where you stand in this draft right now.
Well,
You got a steal of Breece Hall, by the way. I think 8th.
look, yeah, I scrambled to the Rotoworld homepage and looked up Breece Hall because I'm thinking, oh, he must have, torn his ACL or popped his Achilles in practice today. There's no other reason he would fall to 8th, right? Well, he seems to be perfectly fine. I don't really know what happened. It wasn't the plan, and I took no pleasure in taking a running back in the first round. It's not something I like to do, especially.
You've never done. I've never seen you do that.
Right.
I thought you got hacked.
Yeah.
I was concerned.
It was a DDoS attack once again, but look, I had to, because you don't get that sort of opportunity to get a guy who's going to be involved in the pass game, and of course, the primary rusher on a probably a pretty good offense. So anyway, I didn't like doing it because in this sort of format, I usually would start my draft with at least 4, maybe 6, up to 6 receivers. So I've gone receiver heavy since then, but man, it just seems silly to pass him up at number 8.
Kyle, you've been smack in the middle of this draft. Have you liked that slot so far?
I don't love it because I'm very close to Dwayne and Denny, who I think both think very similar to me. So it's always like, I wanted to pair my Patrick Mahomes with Xavier Worthy. He's so buried in the Yahoo ranks. I think that's a big edge in drafting on formats that might have for instance, Yahoo has rookies really lower than I think they should be. And I'm thinking, I'm going to just scoop up all these rookies. And then someone like Denny, someone like Dwayne come in and just beat me to all the values. So normally I'm fine with it. I've been kind of tilted by their good drafting.
Cooter, I know you were kind of waiting a while to pick in the first round, but you took Garrett Wilson, right? Towards the end of the first round. I mean, you got to feel great about that. And then you get the turn back pretty quick. What did you do in the second round, and walk me through that process?
Second round, I took Puka. I was kind of thinking like Denny, I was going to go just wide receiver heavy, which it didn't pan out towards the end. But being at the end of the draft like that, you got to kind of look ahead, scroll down a bit to prepare yourself.
I think this is one of the better teams that we've scrolled through so far, just in terms of high-end talent. I know you're going to be kind of keying in on that next running back and hoping that James Cook gets a big workload here, but you get Laporta, you have a great 1-2 punch at wide receiver, and you didn't wait too long at quarterback with Stroud. While he doesn't give you the rushing, there's upside for 40 passing touchdowns there as well.
Yeah, and they started going off the board. I didn't want to miss out on my few that are my favorites. I would have been okay with Love later on, but I figured I would take my shot on Stroud.
All right, Denny, you're on the clock. Where's the panic levels right now? Because Rotopat, your co-host, Matthew had him just shook early on. It was not right.
Pretty high. Yeah, panic's pretty high. Look, I'm gonna reach here. I've decided I'm going in on a full reach on Jameson Williams because I don't pick for a while here coming up, and I want Jameson Williams. I want to fill that last flex spot with a receiver. And I think Jameson Williams will be involved enough as, not just a deep ball guy in the Detroit offense, really the only one they have, but possibly, in the short area game a little bit. We talked with the Lions beat writer who said, like, this guy's going to see a lot of slants. He's going to see maybe some handoffs. We saw him get a couple carries in the postseason. So I'm not like super thrilled to reach like a full round or 2 rounds on Jameson Williams, but this format, I feel like dictates some pretty wild moves with receiver. I mean, if you look at ADP for receivers right now, ADP is destroyed. Like I'm kind of ignoring receiver ADP because if you were to pay attention to it, you wouldn't ever take a receiver from here on out. You'd be hammering running back and quarterback and tight end because no one in this draft is taking those guys. Rashad White fell, I think, 30 plus picks past his ADP. So you have to adjust to the room.
Cooter, 2 picks in a 4 total pick slot here. Eric has the back-to-back in between you there. But what did you do with your last selection? And do you have to come away with maybe your RB2 in this spot looking at your roster?
Yep, I went there with Javonte Williams, and I'm between 2 right now. Let me see. I feel like I got to go with – I have to wait so long. Let's see. I'll go with – here we go. I'll go Chase Brown.
All right, so I feel like you went a little bit floor with Javonte and a little bit ceiling with Chase Brown there, and split the difference and see where it goes, right?
Yep, and then I'll just go green the rest of the way. Hopefully, get some wide receivers on the way back.
All right, Kyle, you have the weight on both turns there, being right in the middle. But we're going to take a look at your roster in just a second. Is there an area you feel a little bit pressed to go, or have the runs kind of passed us by? I felt like quarterback and tight end kind of passed us by already, where things are a little wide open now.
Yeah, well, if I feel like I have to make any move anywhere, it's running back because we're still waiting on RB1 on this.
You
roster.
haven't. So this is a true. We're looking true zero RB approach.
And you know
here.
what? I'm not even sure. I'm up next. I'm not even sure. Actually, I don't think I am gonna go running back here. Like, look at the running backs at the top of the queue. What's even the point of going running back? Like I'm going committee back Aaron Jones here if that's the top of the queue, if that's what I went with. Like, I'll get committee back Brian Robinson later. I don't even like Austin Eckler. I'll get committee back Austin Eckler later. There are players who could be true breakouts at wide receiver still, and I've just filled out my flex. Like, that's the point in the draft we're getting to, is where my last pick finally got to that flex. I love the 3 wide receiver 2 flex format. It does mean you can gain a lot of ground by going wide receiver heavy. We're going to have a lot of bye weeks too. So I'm still actually going to go another wide receiver here. I think that'll probably be it for my wide receiver. After that, it's hammering the guys Denny likes, the boring running backs who's going to get touches. Those guys fit with the 0 RB roster quite well. And we're about to hit a sweet spot of like, Brian Robinson's not fun, right? He really is going to give me the touches I need.
Yeah.
Denny,
Perry.
Is your roster still only Brees in terms of running back, or have you taken a second one yet?
I have not taken a second running back. I just took Jayden Daniels because I try not to leave drafts without Jayden Daniels at this point. I feel like we're going to see Daniels regularly hit like the 10 rushing mark, the 10 rushes per game mark. I think that's kind of wild with the way that he produces on the ground. I think that Washington's going to face a lot of trailing game script. I think it could be a lot of fun for Jayden Daniels drafters. And so him and Caleb Williams, I think, unlock a lot of late round quarterback potential for those, going in that direction.
So knowing you just said it, you're like, I'm going to walk away with most drafts with Jayden Daniels on my roster. Is there a floor quarterback that you feel like you need to pair him with that you have to roster on your bench, or are you just all in on the Jayden Daniels rookie experience?
Right. So in this is 12 teams. So I would not typically take another quarterback. If he gets dinged up, I'm probably in a bad place anyway. So I'm gonna need to scramble on the waiver wire, and but there should be 2 or 3 startable guys on the waiver wire if push comes to shove. Because really like if I got a floor guy later on, I don't know who, Tua or something, right? I really would never be in a position, I feel like, where I would be like, yes, I'm starting Tua over Jayden Daniels. It just wouldn't happen,
All right, let's pull up. We'll go back to Kyle here in a little bit. Kyle, did you recently make a pick?
While we were talking, I made, I believe it was Ladd McConkey pick. That was the, wide receiver 6 for me. And the hope is that I'm not starting him week 1. He is finally out of flex contention for me. But he could be Justin Herbert's wide receiver 1. And if that's the case, if that's the case, I'm playing him anyways. But assuming he is even close to 1A, 1B player for Justin Herbert, who I just genuinely believe is one of the 6, 8 best quarterbacks in the NFL, he's going to be smashing, and we're going to have a lot of bye weeks coming up. I'll be putting him in there. And if he doesn't hit, it's not the end of the world because I don't necessarily need him early in the season. The hope is that he's coming on late, if anything.
Okay, so are you eventually reaching the point, as we enter round 9, where you're going to start looking at that running back territory of guys that can give you volume?
Oh, yeah. My queue is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not the most exciting volume running backs, and there's no one else in my queue.
Cooter, you are on the long dreaded wait right now. Is there any fingers crossed here for something in particular? Or you're kind of just like, I'll look at the screen in 10 minutes from now.
I'm the type that I always get wishful, hopeful, but I have a couple wide receivers that I'm hoping will fall. They should. But this draft has been pretty unpredictable. Like Denny said earlier, ADP is kind of out the window. So I don't know what to expect.
Yeah, it's been all over the place. And now we're kind of seeing a lot of upside. I don't want to say stashes, but we know Brooks isn't going to play out of the gate. Pat takes him to kick off round 9. Jay loves the upside of Rashid Shaheed.
I knew.
He's been
I was hoping.
best ball darling. Yeah, Yeah, the backdrop might have given that away. Even though Jay can't see that backdrop right now, you and Jay are definitely in on Rashid Shaheed. Is that who you wanted to fall in that scenario?
I was hoping he would, but I know Jay likes him. But I was
Yeah.
hoping he would. I still have 1 or 2 more that I'm hoping will make it.
Matthew following that strategy of being patient. Jalen Warren's probably not going to be ready week 1. Matthew still takes him in round 8. Kyle, you said it with Lad McConkey. You're like, I don't need him to be a hero the first month of the season. I just want the depth down the line. So we're kind of seeing that strategy across the board here as we get closer to Denny. You're right in the middle of this. Kyle, you're right in the middle of this round. I mean, we're just in the wide open territory where you're just going to keep stacking wide receivers here, Denny, or are you kind of stacking up the running backs to eventually pair with Brees?
Yeah, I'm in a tough spot, honestly, because like Kyle said, I look at the running backs available and I'm not on fire for any of them in any regard, right? Like I'm not going to take Zamir White here, even though,
there goes Brian Robinson. It's gonna start like Brian Robinson just went. I mean, we know we have to wait for Brooks. He's gone. Singletary's gone.
Right. So I'm looking. So Zamir White's fallen 31 picks past his ADP.
Make it 32, baby.
That
Make it 32.
That preseason game, preseason week 2 has people very, very afraid of Zamir White.
Yeah, and I think for good reason. Pat Daugherty and I talked on the Rotoworld Football Show today about the Vegas backfield, and I've always been cool to Zamir White anyway because his prototype is not very exciting for fantasy. So I haven't been targeting it. He finally went, I think. Yeah.
Kyle took me.
There you go.
I mean, his prototype is much more enticing when 200 touches is 200 more than you have on your current roster.
You know what? You got it. It's ugly.
Math,
it's ugly,
folks.
but it works. So I'm actually, I am going to take Tajay Spears here because I like his potential to take on the pass catching role in that Tennessee offense. And I actually think the Titans have a chance to be so bad on defense that they're just forced into pass heavy scripts throughout the season. I think that really benefits a guy like Spears, who it was a really good pass catcher last year. And I think Connor, I'm sure you can speak to this, was excelled in that area in college.
Yeah, I think with Tajay, you want him to handle that pass catching role. I mean, you look at what he was able to do in a Tulane offense. That's one of the key things with him coming out at his size. Although I'll say this, Denny, he showed me a lot as an NFL runner right away that I didn't necessarily expect. So we'll see. And we see Zach Moss close out round 9 as well as these running backs come off the board of people kind of chasing, hopefully some volume or some injury insurance volume. All right, guys, we're going to bring on a new group in a second, but I want closing thoughts from all of you. Cooter, I'll start with you because you are on the clock after one more pick.
Oh, good. I was so nervous that Lawrence was going to take Wicks from me. There we go.
All right, so Dontavian Wicks ends up at the end there as we get to the end of round 9. Eric's going to close that out. Kyle, your long running back volume search continues, I assume?
Oh yeah, my queue is just continually adding guys who aren't. I mean, some of them will be fun. It'll circle around. There's a midpoint where I'm like, I need boring touches, and then it hits back an upswing where I'm like, these guys aren't getting me touches, but they might actually be really good at football, and we'll have to wait to find out. But I do think in these deep flex, full PPR formats, hammering receiver early, maybe taking a detour for a onesie position. I did that with Mahomes and Kittle. And then just taking the free touches later in the draft. And then taking some upside shots. Trey Benson, I don't think he's going to play a ton early in the year. He might be really good at football. So I think that's for this type of format how you want to build.
Denny, one closing thought for you. Obviously, you invested heavily in pass catchers after getting the hero RB and Brees in round 1. Does that mean you're going to fill your bench with running backs, or you don't look at it like that?
It's a good question. I'm going to have at least 2 or 3 running backs. Hopefully, from backfields that are sort of here, there, and everywhere. Hard to pin down. I want those. I want that uncertainty on my bench because I think I'm trying to get the guys who can emerge from that muck. That we just don't know about right now. But I'm also going to take some receivers because in this format where you can start up to 5 receivers, you really can't have enough.
All right, guys. Thank you to Denny, Kyle, and Cooter for joining us. We're going to welcome on our next group here as we bring on from Fantasy Life, Kendall Valenzuela and Dwayne McFarland. And, of course, there's my teammate, Lawrence Jackson, Mr. Lord Don't Lose. Lawrence, Scott Pianowski was predicting you taking Anthony Richardson, so much so that I believe it was Dwayne who sniped him right in front of you.
Yeah, you
Oh,
know,
wow.
yeah, I got a little bone to pick with Dwayne right here. About that. You know, but you know what? It's not even his fault. It's not his fault. It's everybody else who got nervous and started taking the quarterbacks in third and fourth rounds. So
the panic was on.
Right. So Dwayne, he ain't really had no choice. You know, I love that move. So what I did was I just went right back to my rankings, and you know, I got Kyler Murray in the 6th round just in case, you know, by the time it came back to me, I'd be out of Jayden Daniels or something.
Dwayne, was it a pure troll move, or was there actually some strategy behind it?
No, it wasn't a troll move.
Don't lie,
honestly,
Dwayne. It was a troll move.
No, you're the troll, Kendall, taking Malik Nabers in round 3.
I know. I'm
Guys,
sorry.
Just Malik Nabers isn't going round 3 to Kendall, but she knew she had to do that to me. And then Ian comes back and takes Rashee Rice in round 4. So the sniping is all over the place. But it wasn't intentional at all. It was just the way the tiers broke. And I was like, you know, the best thing here is to take a quarterback that I really love. And it just happened to be, sorry, Lawrence. It just happened to be the one that
You're
you
not
also
sorry.
love.
Kendall, I think you had one of the surprises around one. I think.
Oh God, why?
Did you take Amon-Ra St. Brown?
You know, it might have been a panic pick. It might have been.
No, you're just
kidding,
around Matthew Berry a lot. You're drinking that ride or die juice from last year. Not that it's a bad thing. I'm not. I just was curious of the thought process through that.
Yeah, you know, I looked at it, and I always like to make my drafts a little bit different. And I was going to see if Jamar Chase was there for me, and I didn't want to take Justin Jefferson there. Not that I'm fading all the hype on Justin Jefferson. Just wanted to do something a little bit different. I thought of pissing Dwayne off even more and taking like a Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, but I thought it was a little bit too early. I wanted to go full 0 RB in this draft for the first 3 rounds, which thankfully it allowed me to do that. But yeah, just wanted, you know, have to keep people guessing, Connor. That's what we're here for, right?
Especially in this draft where everybody knows each other so well between Fantasy Life, Rotoworld NBC, and then Scott Pianowski from Yahoo, who does such great stuff as well, jumping in on here. So I want to go roster by roster for each of you. But before we do that, and as we get to that, Kendall, it looks like you're going to be up next in this group, I believe. Do we have our fingers crossed for something? Is there a roster fill that you need to, like, we just got done talking to both Denny Carter and Kyle Dvorak. Denny took Breece Hall and then ignored running back for the rest of the draft.
That.
Kyle had no interest in ever drafting a running back. So when I signed off with them, their queue was just 7 backup running backs. What are you hoping for in this next spot?
I love that for them. No, I was looking at
for them.
Yeah, right. I was looking at tight end. You know, I'm interested, like these quarterback stack, Jordan Love, Brock Purdy. I thought they would have been gone by now. Caleb Williams too. So I'm really interested to see who ends up taking them. But I think I'm going to. I've got enough. I've got Tony Pollard on my bench, so I want to make sure to get some wide receivers in here because I think there's just such a big tier drop off when Dwayne and I talk about it, when everyone talks about it, like there's just these big tier drop offs. And I think there's still some pretty solid running backs. Solid. I say solid with like air quotes, Connor. I'm like solid running backs on the board, but
yeah, I can talk myself into this and
I'm like, okay, I can close my eyes and make this pick and it's not as bad. It's not going to be super sexy, but I think maybe looking at some wide receivers here just to get some depth is probably what I'm going to try and do. These are pretty gross names on the board though. I'm not going to lie.
We have your team up right now. And I mean, to me, there's a clear strategy. You got floor, of course, with upside in Amon-Ra St. Brown and a ton of upside at wide receiver in Olave and Nabers. And then really a lot of volume with Josh Jacobs and Rashad White, right?
Yeah, that's basically it. And again, I liked where I picked them. I went 0 RB. I knew what I was doing trying to snipe Dwayne because I knew Malik Nabers would not make it back. You have to scroll down. The ADP is just so different here, Connor. And we talk about this all the time. Like it's so different from drafting on Underdog, from drafting like NFFC, all those other drafts. Like it's just so different. So you kind of have to scroll a little bit to find some of those guys. So yeah, I just wanted some good wide receivers. I wanted to tilt Dwayne a little bit and it worked. And so here we are.
All right, Lawrence, we'll take a look at your team in a second. And of course, we'll do the same for Dwayne. What has surprised you in this draft, Lawrence? I know you took Jonathan Taylor, I believe, in the first round. Somebody that I agree with you. I think he's being undervalued. And you also have him paired with Saquon Barkley. So you're a lot stronger at the running back position, while honestly, much of this league has not ignored it, but either taken one and moved on or just paired round 9 on guys here?
Well, yeah, I'm a big muscle guy, so I gotta go 2 running backs off the rip. What surprised me though was Denny taking Brees Hall, because I was thinking to myself, I'm like, these guys really gonna let me get this young man at number 10. I didn't think it was gonna be Denny that picked him, because he's always talking about never drafting.
He's never drafted a running back.
But I see what he did here. He got the one, top dog at running back, then just ignored it for 3 years. So I would say that was the most shocking part to me. So obviously going back-to-back running backs in a full PPR, you're not going to end up with the best group of wide receivers. But I feel like having Michael Pittman and Keenan Allen, them 2 dudes coming off 1,100 plus yard seasons each, and that's easy to forget. But if I could get them numbers out of those guys with these running backs, then I'm feeling good about the start.
Yeah, Lawrence, you drafted the biggest wide receivers and running backs you possibly could, and the smallest quarterback in the league. Just notice there's an aesthetic trend here going on. Not saying it won't work in fantasy.
I had to balance that out, but that's why I got, that's why I took his boy Trey McBride first. So I had that little stack, that little connection right there. So when I saw, as soon as I saw Dwayne take Anthony Richardson, I'm like, all right, next round, I'm getting Kyler Murray. And if they take Kyler Murray, I'm taking Jayden Daniels. Like, I was prepared to take Jayden Daniels in the 6th round. Like, I would have done that in this draft. Because again, remember, it's about, knowing who you're drafting with. Like, I don't want, I wouldn't have wanted Denny to get Jayden Daniels had I not had a quarterback already. So it's all about like kind of knowing who's in the room and what might shake out. But, it's decent. But again, we all like our rosters when it's, no injuries and no games played yet.
All right, Dwayne, we're going to take a look at your team here. And you just took Trey Benson. Walk me through that pick in round 11 here.
That was mostly just to screw Denny because, he really needs some upside at running back on his team. No, he's just at the top of the queue. I've got my tiers set up. I'm looking at my roster. Trey Benson's just a guy who's playing behind James Conner. James Conner, what does he do every year? He's pretty much hurt, but he's been very productive in that offense. So Trey Benson, he's a guy that coming out of college, I liked a lot. I don't think he's like an elite running back, but I think he's a pretty good running back. And if at any point, he gets on the field this year, he could force more of a committee, with James Conner, if Conner has to miss time. But if Conner goes down, I think you're looking at somebody that we might be ranking inside our top 12. We'll at least be ranking inside, our top 24 running backs. So I really needed a receiver there, but multiple went in a row. After my last pick, Jacoby Myers, Josh Palmer, Adonai Mitchell, who I was hoping to come back and stack with Anthony Richardson, also Josh Downs. That was my backup plan. Those guys all went. So it was really a matter of, okay, they took the receivers I was really looking at here. So we'll go with Trey Benson.
Dwayne, walk me through taking Brandon Ayuk right now and how conflicting of a stance that could be, as we're not sure where he's going to play. We're not sure when he's going to play. How do you kind of balance that considering where you took him?
Yeah, it's tough. I didn't necessarily want Brandon Ayuk, but I'm not passing a wide receiver that's that good in the middle of the 3rd round. I would rather he play for the 49ers, obviously, than the Steelers. But it's just, in my opinion, that's just too far for him. I was prepared. I wanted Malik Nabers there. I was also prepared to just go ahead and take Rashee Rice there. But whenever Brandon Ayuk was sitting there, I'm like, okay, I can't pass on Brandon Ayuk.
And Kendall, I know you said you ended up taking Malik Nabers a little earlier than maybe we expected, but no, number one, we brought up the ADP difference. Kyle brought this point up. It feels like rookies are a little overlooked ADP wise on Yahoo. And the upside for Malik Nabers, the upside is the same as Marvin Harrison Jr., even though they're not being drafted anywhere near each other right now.
Yeah. That's why I knew I kind of wanted to go get him, because if you read everything, what do we always like to chase in fantasy football? It's the volume. And so when you look, I'm going to be honest, beginning of the year, when we started drafting and stuff, I wasn't on Malik Nabers as much. And now, looking at everything, looking at the utilization report from Dwayne, it's just one of those guys that I need a little bit more of. So I was excited to be able to go out and get him, especially with the ADP difference. Because like I said, if you're on Underdog, if you're on some of those other drafting sites, you're not going to get Malik Nabers isn't going to go to you in the 3rd round. He's just not. He's been creeping up draft boards for for quite some time now. And now you've got, you know, Connor, all the hype, the training camp videos. I mean, he's like a
nice
darling.
catches in practice. And
I
that
know.
was that.
It's just like he's the training camp. What are we talking about? Everyone's gonna want him. So yeah, I just think it's good though to know the ADP differences, especially with those wide receivers. Like I was expecting to come in here and, well, maybe not with this group because we love wide receivers here, but in a lot of other places, if you're drafting on Yahoo, ESPN, like the running backs go really early.
Lawrence, I know you had a tough situation while you're giving us analysis. It auto picked Dak for you, so we're gonna ignore that one. But as we get to this point of the draft, we'll say round 12 and on. Are there certain players that you find yourself walking away with more often than not?
Yeah, outside of this particular draft here, I would say Tajay Spears. I heard Denny say that he kind of picked him because he felt like he had to, but I really like Tajay Spears as my third running back if that's how it falls. In this particular draft, I was able to get DeAndre Swift as my third back, which is what I would prefer. But in other drafts, I don't mind having Tajay Spears in that flex spot, knowing, or at least it's looking like it's going to be a 50-50 split with him and Pollard. And coming off 52 catches, 385 yards, that's in the receiving game alone. Then you throw in the fact that he had 400 plus yards rushing, averaging 4.5 yards a carry. Like, this is with Derrick Henry. So now that we have Tony Pollard with him, I don't expect any of that to regress. It can only progress. So I like him more than Tony Pollard, to be honest. If I was to choose, like, if someone picks Tony Pollard, I'm like, have at it, brother, sister, or what have you. I'm finna take Tajay Spears and love it. And if I was one of them people that never drafted running backs or drafted Breece Hall first like Denny and drafted 9 receivers, I would be trying to get Tajay Spears as my second running back, just like he did.
Dwayne, what about you? Anyone at this point in the draft where it could be on coincidence, it could be that you just value them a round or two differently than everybody else's?
Yeah, I mean, once you get to round 10 or so, I do think, like, if you've got an inside track on a player that you just really like, you should just take your guys. I mean, you have to obviously look at your roster construction. If you spent more picks, early on running backs, you should be spending more picks later on receiver. If you took more receivers early, you should probably be throwing more darts at running backs, which we're now seeing Denny do. So it kind of depends on what you're building out. But I love wide receiver Jaylen Polk, for the New England Patriots. There's just really not anything there to hold him back, in my opinion. It's TBD. Like, is he going to be a good player? He still has to go out and earn targets and do his part. But he plays on an offense that's dying for someone to come out here and catch some passes. So I really do like Jaylen Polk. Some other names that I like here. I mean, obviously, I just took Trey Benson. But Curtis Samuel is a player that I got later than he should have been just because of the toe injury. So as guys start to fall down the draft board, and I needed wide receiver because I had taken 3 early, but we could start as many as 5, and you have to start 3. It's a full PPR league. So I would prefer to have more wide receivers early. It didn't necessarily work out that way. Once I got my first 4, I had to go a different direction, took some running backs. But getting a guy like Curtis Samuel that's falling due to injury, I don't have to have him right out of the gate. But like, we look at Buffalo again, like, who's going to be the wide receiver 1 there? We don't know right now. Like, Keon Coleman's probably the early favorite, but would it surprise us if Curtis Samuel, got 22%, 23% target share, from Josh Allen? That'd be really good in fantasy.
Kendall, we saw the run on quarterbacks kind of take off in this draft. And once it got going, we saw Josh Allen go and there was a little low. And then we really saw the run go. I believe there was about 2 teams. I want to say Pat was waiting on quarterback for a while. Scott said it on the broadcast. He's like, I will be the last person most likely to take a quarterback in this draft. If you are in that situation where the run just passed you by, maybe you had too long of a wait, is there a strategy for you, whether it's I'll take 2 of the lower tier quarterbacks, I'll take an upside play and a floor play? How do you handle that situation when that happens to you?
Yeah, I think it's just important to read the board. Like you said, if there's a run and you miss out and it's a 1 quarterback league like this one is, I'm fine continuing to wait, because realistically in these kinds of drafts, I'm not trying to walk away with 2 necessarily. I'm good with getting one, especially if it's the elite guys. If it's Joe Burrow, like me, Anthony Richardson, Kyler Murray, like I'm okay walking away with those guys as my only quarterback in these kinds of leagues. So I say keep waiting and keep playing it out. Now you don't want to go too late where you're drafting like Derek Carr at the end, or no offense to Derek Carr, but like you just don't want to walk away with those kinds of guys, Kirk Cousins. But I think if you just continue to watch the board and you see, especially if you're right in the middle, if you see your league mates ahead of you and they've got their quarterbacks, and you see some of the people behind you and they've got their quarterbacks, I think it's okay to start waiting it out. Like I said, don't wait until you're walking away with like Will Levis, but like let's be realistic here. But maybe just watch the board, and I think you can continue to stack up other options, and then go get your quarterback if you've missed out.
All right, in just a moment, I'm going to get a favorite pick and a least favorite pick from each of you. And it's not a pick you made. It has to be somebody else in this. So I'll put you on the spot in just a moment. But before that, the Rotoworld Fantasy Football Draft Guide is now available exclusively through a new partnership with Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life. Get a Fantasy Life Plus subscription and receive the Rotoworld Draft Guide plus fantasy, DFS, and betting tools to help you dominate all season long. Well, use promo code ROTO10 for 10% off. Go to fantasylife.com/rotoworld to learn more. All right, Dwayne, I will start with you. Your favorite pick you saw from someone, and if you have one, your maybe most questionable is the polite way to say it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll go with Rashee Rice to Ian Hartitz in round 4. I think the closer we get to the season, the more likely it is that we're just not getting a suspension for Rashee Rice this year. Like his court date isn't until December. That's not actually a date like that they would be determining anything.
Right.
So it feels like his legal team is going to get the can kicked down the road to next season. And if everybody knew that and that was already baked in, like we would be talking about Rashee Rice as being a player everyone's taking in round 3, potentially as high as like early in round 3. The guy has a 38% target share on pass plays with Patrick Mahomes this preseason. He's the guy they like to use underneath. Obviously, Xavier Worthy, who I also took, is the guy that's stretching out the field. We know Kelsey's going to do Kelsey things. Eventually, they'll get Hollywood Brown back, but just an offense we want to be a part of. So I think the Rashee Rice pick at this point, it's one that I just always have in my back pocket. I typically try to get him on every single team. So I'll give a hat tip to Ian on that one. And then if we're looking for a polite pick, you say that we thought was not a good one, I will go.
Don't take.
I'm going to go with probably DJ Moore at the end of round 2. And I really like DJ Moore. Like I'm taking him in round 3 and round 4 of drafts. But there's just a lot of target competition, right now in Chicago. I mean, we've got Keenan Allen, we've got Rome Odunze. So I feel like with DJ Moore, and I don't hate that pick. I'm just like, if I'm just searching for one, I was trying to look earlier in the draft. DJ Moore is a name that I'm probably not taking at the end of round 2. That was Rotopat's pick. So Rotopat's, he's super sharp guy. Like he obviously knows what he's doing, but I'm probably passing on DJ Moore.
Lawrence, what about you?
So I already talked about Tajay Spears. I would say that was my favorite pick by Denny in the 9th round, but since I already talked about him, I'll go back to Rotopat getting Caleb Williams here at the 12-12 spot here. He's a quarterback 10 for me, so that means he's a regular starter in a one quarterback redraft league. So after, going so long without a quarterback and stacking his roster, some other quarterbacks kind of went in there, including me taking my second quarterback, Dak Prescott, for no reason. Rotopat was able to get Caleb Williams there, so I like that. And sticking with quarterbacks, I would say my least favorite is from our guy, Eric, not because he took Josh Allen, because that's a great pick, but because you the first one to take a quarterback, and when you the first one, when you're right, you're not supposed to blink. Let somebody else blink. When you the first man to take a quarterback, you the one that like we make it funny now. We saying you was nervous. We saying you was shook, flustered, and confused. So you took that quarterback first. So Eric, my boy, I gotta give it to you, but my bad.
All right, Kendall, what do you got? Close us out here.
Let me go. Who took Joe Mixon? I think Jay took Joe Mixon. I was waiting on him, so I got sniped. So I think whenever I have to shake my head and say, "Dang, I wanted to get him," especially in that 0 RB builds, it was one that I tried to go out and get. So I think he got solid value there. And then let's see. what did Lawrence do here today? What do we got here?
God.
No, in a good way. I love the Trey McBride pick. I'm not gonna lie. I love the Arizona Cardinals offense as well. So I love that pick. No, I'm just kidding. I'm gonna go with, I think it was Denny. I think Denny had something that the Devontae Adams. I'm just fading Devontae Adams this season. So I think it's just my ultimate go-to of like, oh, who didn't do so hot? I think the Devontae Adams pick is probably in that category.
All right, our draft is coming to a close here. We are in the final round. A huge thank you to everyone that joined us. Jay Croucher, Eric Samolsky, Scott Pianowski, Denny Carter, Cooter Doodle, Kyle Dvorak, of course, the three right here, and Kendall Valenzuela, Lawrence Jackson, and Dwayne McFarland. Thank you to you guys. Thanks to everybody that tuned in. And of course, we hope you enjoyed the Fantasy Football Marathon today at NBC Sports.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Rotoworld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.